children and teachers, please.
Boys and girls for Jesus. Home and school and play everywhere we'll tell the world of life in Jesus. He is our home. And all we need in Jesus won't you come alone. Boys and girls for Jesus. This is our earnest prayer. Boys and girls for Jesus. Home and school and play and everywhere we'll tell the world of life in Jesus. He is our song. And all you need in Jesus won't you come alone.
Saints, would you stand, please? Sister Kay, would you open us up in prayer, please?
Dear Lord God, we just thank you for this day thus far, dear God. I appreciate the message this morning, dear Father, that you sent to us, dear God. Just continue to bless this day, dear Father, and bless the ongoing services that we're going to have, dear Father. Just be in our midst, dear God, we pray. Lord God, just bless everything that's said and done, dear God. Bless the children, dear Father, as they render their services, dear Father. So, Lord God, just go with us and stand by. Well, thank you again for bringing Sister Beard out this morning.
Yes.
Appreciate the answer our prayers for God. We thank you for that. So just to continue to stand by us and go with us, dear Father, and just keep us in your will and your favor. We praise you for all that you do. In Jesus' name, amen.
I just want to take this time very shortly to say how much we appreciate the teachers and their time, and we just have a really great group of teachers. They're very conscientious and just really have a burden for the children. And, you know, a lot of times they may want to be here and they may desire to be here in the adult class, but they're willing to teach the children. So we really appreciate it. Thank God for Sister Beverly. And as we said before, we're just holding down the fort until she takes her place. So pray for her. All right, we're going to start with Sister Wanda.
This is my little class, and we go down the alphabets, and we're going to do 2 alphabets today. We're on the left. What letter are we on today? What letter are we on? G. But we're going to do another one first. We're going to do D. What was D for?
Disciples.
Everybody say it together.
Disciples.
Okay, and I want you to say the 12 disciples. Go ahead.
Peter, Andrew, James, and John, Matthew, Philip, Bartholomew, Thomas, James, and Simon, Thaddeus, and Judas.
Good. G, and it was for what? G for what?
Gideon.
Everybody say it together.
Gideon.
Okay, and what did God have Gideon to do? What did God have Gideon to do? Say it out loud.
10 people.
Okay, and how many men did Gideon have to help him? How many? Say it out loud.
300.
Okay, men. Oh.
I'll give one.
And so, what was that letter again?
G.
Should I say it together?
G.
And Gideon, when Gideon said when he gives a signal, what did the men have to do? The flag, the sword of the Lord and Gideon. Flash, the sword of the Lord and Gideon. Now they had torches back in those days. They had torches and they had glass over the torches, and that's how they, when they came to the enemy camp, that's how they did to the enemy, and it scared them so bad when they all just left. So Gideon, they didn't have to fight at all. So God fought the battle for them. And so at the signal, they had to blow their horns, break the glass, and say the sword of the Lord and Gideon. All right.
Sister, oh. Oh, Sister Elaine, Sister Joan Elaine. Oh, good. No, go ahead. No, you can. Go ahead, Sister Elaine, Sister
Try to redeem myself a little bit here. Last week. Hopefully I won't be as ditzy. I apologize for the plethora of information, but I mean, it's what it took to try to understand what we were trying to learn about. So, with that said, we're not going to try to, put forth just all of the information, but hit the points that will help us to understand what we're talking about here. So, I think there's a scripture that says, you worship, you know not what here. But we're trying to understand what's going on here in the worship world. Let's see. We went over this. We're talking about worship. We had a little intro here. Let's see, who said they wanted to read the intro? Okay, and when we get done, I have some additional notes.
There's the mic right here.
It's on? It's on?
God created man with prosperity to worship with propensity to worship with the intent that man would worship him. Many ancient civilizations, not knowing the God of creation, gave themselves to pagan idolatrous worship. The arrival of spring was celebrated in every ancient society and included in a host of goddesses, heavenly bodies, customs and rituals that celebrated the general was newness of life and fertility, used in celebrations of spring.
Okay,
Young people talk louder.
so we're talking about spring, and, well, we were talking about worship, man's propensity to worship that he was created with the intent that man would worship God. God has put something in man, a place that is for himself. God wanted companionship with his creation. So, ancient civilizations that did not know the true God, and man has fallen from God, and they came to worship other things instead of God. And it's what we call pagan worship, idolatrous worship. Okay, one of the things that was worshipped was the arrival of spring. Spring was celebrated in every ancient society. Like I said, man, not knowing the true God, they related to things that mattered to them. It mattered to them about their crops and life, because they couldn't go down to Walmart or Myers They grew their food and they needed abundant yields. And so there was a God assigned to everything that they could entreat for, you know, the prosperity of their crops and of their, you know, procreation. They wanted, you know, big families or whatever. And I mean, you know, to prosper, there was a God assigned to it, God that controlled the suns and the rains and so forth and so on. So, with that said, we are focusing on the springtime celebration. And it included a lot of things. Used in celebrations of spring in these pagan societies. They worshipped, let's see, what was used? Eggs. Eggs were a symbol of life. And who was it that, what produces, what animal produces the eggs? What animal produces eggs? You know what animal produces eggs?
A mother hen, that's a chicken.
A mother hen, that's a chicken, correct. Now, chickens are incentivized to lay eggs by light. And, okay, so we talked about, you know, why chickens produced abundantly when the springtime comes. So let's see, who wants to read the little ditty here about the chicken? I think you were our zoology expert, weren't you? So she told us about the rabbit last week. So, okay, the chickens. You want to read the little, just starting from here and ending here.
City folk may not know that chickens who are kept in natural lighting, but laying in when days are short, they and begin again as the days when March/April is their time of year, and those eggs are valued and welcome protein source for our winter's starved ancestors. Eggs were used in celebrations of spring and ancient and civilizations of civilized.
Okay, thank you. So, after winter, in the wintertime, they kind of don't lay eggs a lot. But at the beginning of spring, light appears, days are longer, they really produce a lot of eggs. And so this egg had became a symbolic of life. So eggs were used in about every civilization as a symbol, like they had children playing games and the egg roll and the Easter hunt and all that kind of thing. And that's what they did. Okay. Moving along here. Okay, ancient societies and their gods. We're going to talk about 3 gods, goddesses here that were worshipped in the mythological societies here. And the first one will be, we did talk about this last week, so we're not going to read all about her, but we'll just kind of hit the main points. Let's see, did you want to do Estora? Okay, Estora. History, where I have under right here. Yes.
Ostora, or Eostre, or Istre, is the Germanic goddess of spring and dawn. The pagan Anglo-Saxons held festivals in her honor. Easter was originally the name for the spring equinox.
Ah, so Easter became the name named after the Estora, who was the goddess of spring and dawn. So she was a very important goddess that they worshipped, festivals and whatnot. And Okay, said that this name evolved to be Easter, and Easter was originally the name for something we call the spring equinox. And we had our astrology expert here talking about the equinox. Okay, we're not going to read all of it. Let's just tell what the equinox was. Let's see. We'll just read that. What happens in March?
On the March equinox, the sun crosses the celestial equator from south to north. It's called the celestial equator because it's imaginary line in the sky above the Earth's equator.
Okay, so the equinox happens when the sun passes through the Earth's equator. And in doing so, the sun is shining on the Earth so as all parts of the Earth have an equal amount of light. And there are equal days and nights. Meaning, yeah, what equinox means here.
The word equinox comes from Latin words for equal night.
Okay, that's good. So, all parts of the earth have equal amounts of day and night, and that day, that is the spring equinox. And this happens twice a year, in the spring and in the autumn. So, the spring was very important, like I said, everyone, this was this signified the beginning of spring. The equinox signified the beginning of spring, and everybody's ready to bust out of that darkness and welcome the light, okay? So, we have Astora, who was the goddess of this celebration of spring, and like I said, it was signified, they are observing the heavenly bodies, and they know this is the time, and they go at it. Okay, celebrate. And let's see, in our calendar, the occurrence of this equinox is the dates on there? The occurrence that
Wednesday, March 20th.
okay, that was this year's. It's different times of year. Like I said, they go by the sun, you know, I mean the moon and all of that. And so it's going to be different times each year. And it's usually between the 19th, 20th, 21st. Usually always the end of March. That's the spring equinox. Okay, so this is a very important thing to remember, the equinox, okay? Because as we move on to these other worship systems, we're going to find that these all kind of blend in together. So let's see, Astora was the first god. Now we have a couple of other gods we're going to be talking about. Who wanted to? No. I'll read it. Okay, mythical gods who died violently in order to ensure fecundity. Who remembers the vocab? Fecundity? Fecundity? Fecundity.
When hares reproduce, something like that.
Yeah. That's reproduction, fertility. So like I said, that's what they, look forward to. This is what they live by, abundant crops, abundant children, whatever, okay? Animals, whatever. So, thus saying, we have an Egyptian god named Osiris, correct? Shania, she was actually telling me about these gods. Now, she's just kind of holding out on us, but she knows a lot about this. So, I guess she just doesn't want to speak. You don't want to speak. She doesn't want to speak. So, okay, Osiris was the Egyptian god of agriculture, death, and resurrection. Okay, the story behind Osiris I was telling they got some fantastic things going on in this God world. I mean, wow. Okay, he was killed by his jealous brother Set and revived by his wife Isis. The Egyptians reenact Osiris' story in fertility dramas every year at the overflowing of the Nile. So this is an Egyptian god, which is the start of the spring planting season. So when the Nile overflows and the fertility from the river goes into their lands, it's readying the ground for the spring planting season. So this is a very important festival there in Egypt, worshiping this god Osiris. We have another god here, Adonis, which is a Greek god, a Greek fertility god. And let's see, Adonis' story. He was violently killed when hunting a wild boar. So he's on the hunt, and he gets this wild boar, and the boar ends up killing him. So at the spot where he died, a flower sprung up. This flower, I don't know, Sister Patrice might know it, an anemone. You know is that how you say it? Anemones? Okay, they're nice little flower. Very pretty. Okay, it sprung up in the place where he died, and his blood stained this flower red. Okay, so you have this red anemone in the spot where Adonis died. Now, this is a Greek god, okay, Adonis, and Adonis had a lover whose name was, I think everyone might be familiar with, Aphrodite. Aphrodite was the goddess of love, and that was Adonis's mate or whatever. So Aphrodite, upon the Adonis dying, Aphrodite couldn't find him anywhere. So she wandered the earth in search of him, during which time there was no passion in men or women, and no crops or flowers grew. So it was a dark, cold, barren time as Aphrodite is searching the earth for Adonis. So now, in doing so, the earth is barren. It's sad. So this is winter, cold, barren. It's signifying Aphrodite looking for Adonis. So I guess the king god, who is the king of the Greek gods? Zeus. Zeus. He sees this predicament. And so Zeus decides he's going to allow Adonis to be reborn. And this happens in the spring. So Adonis comes to life in the spring, and he's allowed to be united with Aphrodite for 6 months, half a year, and then I guess he dies again. So, like I said, fascinating stories these guys. So Adonis' followers mourn his death by casting